Well, in the capital market, it is important to have investor protection. But investor protection should not be equated with some form of insurance that the investor will not lose money or that he will make a profit on his investment. Investor protection should recognize that when someone enters the capital market, he must be conscious of the risks which are involved in the capital market and of the benefits which would flow from the capital market. And he must be in a position to take an informed decision as to what securities he should purchase, when he should exit, etc. And the fundamental requirement of taking this sort of a decision is that he must have complete knowledge of what is happening in the capital market. So if we lay down very precise and clear guidelines as to what a prospectus should contain, and then we gave the responsibility to the merchant banker to ensure that the guidelines have been complied with, then you will have a much faster way of clearing prospectuses.
Okay.
And secondly, it was a sort of a stick and carrot approach. You license a merchant banker, and as a result of that license, he gets some income. Therefore, he should be ensured that he is competent and he is functioning. If he functions, he continues to be registered. If he defaults, then you always have an option of removing the registration, and that was the stick. And I think this has functioned quite well. Corporate governance was a movement which was started by the Cadbury Committee in England. And Cadbury defined corporate governance as the system by which companies are managed and controlled.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, we have to see what is the ideal way in which companies are managed and controlled. Now, there are three elements which are important. First, there is the board of directors.
Mm-hmm.
Second, there is the management. And third, there are the shareholders. Now, each of these needs to be independent, so that if the management is accountable to the board, then the management must be independent of the board.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then in the drafting of that code, we did consider a number of other corporate governance codes which had been formulated abroad. There was the Blue Ribbon Commission in the US. There was the OECD, which was there. There was another committee, the Greenberry, I think, committee in England. We saw that data. But we also realized that corporate structures are not the same in all countries. For example, the corporate structure in Europe is different. They have two levels. They have a supervisory board and a management board. The corporate structure in the US has a system where almost in all cases, or a majority of cases, the managing director and the chairman of the board are about the same. You have a system in England where in many cases the chairman was independent of the board. In the Asian concept is that most of these companies are family dominated. Yes. The family is the major investor in these companies, and naturally they want to control the way in which the companies are run. So, whereas you may have independent directors, it's very difficult to have professional directors who are independent of the family. And we have to recognize those facts when we formulate code. But one of the thoughts at that point was that if there were people abroad who wanted to donate money for the purpose of microfinance, then we needed to create a vehicle through which they could donate the money. And that was the concept of the social mutual fund. In fact, I think the microfinance industry has revived so much that so many of the larger units of the microfinance industry have now become small banks, and it has become integrated into the banking system. Well, the Financial Sector Legislative Reforms Commission took a holistic view rather than looking at individual acts. And they determined that there were certain essential conditions which should be provided for in any legislation, particularly in the financial sector. For example, if you have a legislation, then the role of the regulator must be very clearly defined in the act. That there must be that you must have consumer protection. That if you have you may have all the requirements for consumer protection, but there is no guarantee that a financial sector company will not fail. I was fortunate to join the board of the National Stock Exchange almost immediately after it was formed. So we were really treading on new ground and creating a new organization. One of the important things to remember was that at that point of time there was the Bombay Stock Exchange.
Yes.
And we created a new National Stock Exchange. And the fundamental difference between the two was that whereas the Bombay Stock Exchange operated in the trading ring, the National Stock Exchange operated nationally through a
online system.
Digital system. The second point was that in the Bombay Stock Exchange, there was not any distinction between the brokers and the management. They constituted the management. Whereas in the National Stock Exchange, we said there would be a complete distinction. No broker was a part of the board of the National Stock Exchange. The third was that we decided from the start itself that the National Stock Exchange had been formed by IDBI and public sector institutions to fulfill a need, not as a profit-making organization. And therefore, the fees which we charge were constantly reduced as the volumes increased. And we looked upon it as a social organization rather than as a commercial organization. In a democracy, you have three major elements. You have the legislature, you have the executive, and you have the judiciary.
Yeah.
But in a regulator, all the roles are combined. The regulator is often both. He formulates the regulations, he manages the regulations, and he also gives the penalties.